So as we're harvesting and as we're replanting, I thought it would be a good time for a video. Since this is actually the first video that I've done of our garden this year, I thought it was well overdue. I'm gonna start furthest away from the coop, really because I have a broody hen in there and she's very loud. So we'll start over here. This is our first bed. This bed was supposed to be peppers. And you can see I have jalapeno peppers in the front and I have some bell peppers in the back that have really just been kind of taken over by these massive tomatoes. Those tomatoes I did not plant. Those were planted actually by the chickens. I have volunteer tomatoes all over the garden. And so I really didn't have the heart to just pull them. So throughout this video, you're going to see tomatoes everywhere, and I really should have, but you know, I guess when I get massive amounts of tomatoes, I'll probably regret that. But I keep thinking, you know, like I'll have salsa, we'll have tomato sauce, we'll have all kinds of all this canning stuff. So, and then in between the beds are the feed sacks that are my weed barrier, and eventually in between the beds there will be rock. So this is my broccoli bed. The broccoli has been eaten, not completely though, so I don't powder, I don't really do anything, I just kind of let it go. And then in between the broccoli are my volunteer tomatoes. And again, I picked some, I left some. Tomatoes don't really make very good garden companions with other crops. So again, it was kind of the big experiment. I think not every bed has tomatoes in them, but most. And then the walkway. And then over here is my cherry tomato bed. This one I transplanted from other beds. I planted seeds. I put them in the blocks. Really, they're just everywhere. And this bed are my Brussels sprouts. And then in the cinder blocks are carrots, along with the weeds, obviously. And then here we have our cucumbers. Those are coming along nicely. We just started harvesting the cucumbers. So they look pretty good. We put a couple fence panels in there for them to jump on. And then we have the green bean bed. And it's looking pretty good. We have had 2 or 3 harvests off of this. Enough for me to can. And then even in the walkways are tomatoes. And then this last bed, same thing. I know it looks mostly tomatoes, but I actually planted beets in it. And so I have beets going through, and then tomatoes, volunteer tomatoes through. And then in the blocks, I have basil. And then so this is actually, we're next to the coop. And so this is actually the only part that has been rocked. So, and then we go over here. And these 2 beds were, I had red potatoes in this one, and I had white potatoes in this one. And I dug the potatoes, and so now I replanted potatoes actually in this bed for a second crop that I'll probably harvest maybe by Thanksgiving. And then in that far bed, I did radishes and carrots. And so then this bed originally was my radishes. The front was radishes and then the back was lettuce. The back is still lettuce, I just keep cutting it off. And then around the outside are the basil. The basil, I actually cut the basil and put it in the chicken coop in with our bedding. It helps pests and it helps it smell better and just keeps the basil under control a little bit. And then my second crop on this from radishes are the zucchini. The zucchini grow relatively quickly, so I'm not really concerned about getting a crop off of that because I'm pretty certain I will get something. And then this last year was the perennial bed. And so it looks like weeds, but in the back are Egyptian walking onions. Those were the first onions that we had like in April. They were awesome. And then they get these huge seed pods on them, on the tops. And then I obviously haven't weeded it. But, and then you have strawberries coming through, which are kind of spreading everywhere. So this bed will get split. And then cilantro around the outside in the blocks. And then one volunteer tomato again that I just didn't pick. I really should have. But look at all of those tomatoes on it. I didn't pick it. I'm not gonna. And then this bed is my tomato bed. This one is the beefsteaks, the Romas, the golden tomatoes. We actually picked our first ripe one was on Saturday. And so then we have another ripe one. And actually the ones that I planted in the blocks are the ones that I transplanted from other beds, because those are the ones that the chickens actually have this bed in the fall, the winter, and the spring. When I'm not using it, they have this kind of as their run. And so when we fed them, because I usually leave the tomatoes on the bed and things, and the chickens will peck at it and scratch at it. And so they have really they spread the tomatoes everywhere. But it is kind of cool. I mean, it just pretty much tripled the amount of tomatoes we had. And so then this bed it was peas. And so we harvested our peas. I made cold pea soup. It was okay. And then, so after that, I took out all of the pea plants because they had died down, and I replanted potatoes in this one. And then this last bed is our onions. And then it has some alyssum. The white flowers around in the blocks are alyssum. And then the onions are ready to harvest, and we've kind of been harvesting as we go for our table. I'm just kind of setting up a place to store the onions. So we'll see how that goes. So that's our garden video. I'll probably have updates definitely on how the second crop of potatoes will go, and probably more canning videos as I start in with all of the tomatoes.